The Discovery, the massive Cytherian exploration vessel, Starweaver, drifted through the void like a floating crystal cathedral. Its hull gleamed with the purple-blue light that marked all ships of the Cytherian collective. Commander Zethis stood on the bridge, his crystalline skin catching the soft glow of the control panels. His 4 arms moved gracefully across the displays as he studied the readings before him. Commander called Dr. Nixara from her station. Her tentacle-like appendages danced over the sensor controls with practiced precision. We are approaching. The coordinates, planet Zerion Prime, should be visible soon. Zethis nodded, his faceted eyes reflecting the star charts. The Cytherian collective had been exploring this sector for decades, cataloguing dead worlds and failed colonies. Prime was supposed to be another entry in their growing database of civilizations that could not survive away from their homeworlds. Bring it up on the main display, Zethis commanded. His voice carried the musical quality common to all Cytherians, like crystal chimes in a gentle breeze. The massive screen flickered to life, showing a brown and green world spinning slowly. Against the star field, white clouds swirled across its surface, and 2 small moons hung in the distance like guardian spirits. This is the human colony world, Dr. Nixara reported, her voice filled with academic curiosity. According to our records, Earth sent a colonization fleet here 200 years ago. The last transmission was received 150 years ago. All subsequent contact attempts failed. Zethis studied the planet with interest. The Cytherian collective had encountered humans before, but only in small numbers. They were a young species, barely capable of interstellar travel. Most alien civilizations considered them primitive and short-lived. Their colonies rarely lasted more than a few decades before environmental challenges or equipment failures forced evacuation or led to complete extinction. Begin deep scans, Zethis ordered. Let us document what remains of their settlement. Perhaps we can learn something useful about planetary colonization failures. Dr. Nixara's tentacles worked swiftly across her controls. The Starweaver's advanced sensors reached out to examine the planet below. Zethis expected to find the usual signs of a failed colony: scattered metal debris, overgrown ruins, perhaps a few weathered monuments marking where the humans had tried and failed to build a new home. Instead, the readings that appeared on the screen made him step back in surprise. "That cannot be correct," he said, his crystalline features shifting color with confusion. "Run the scan again." Dr. Nixara's large eyes widened as she confirmed the readings. "Commander, I am detecting massive energy signatures across 3 continents. There are cities, agricultural areas, and what appears to be an active spaceport. The readings indicate a thriving civilization." Zethis felt his chest cavity resonate with disbelief. How many life signs? Approximately 80,000 human signatures. Commander Bay. They appear to be engaged in active industrial and agricultural operations. Before Zethis could respond, the communications officer called out from across the bridge. "Commander, we are receiving a transmission from the planet's surface." "Put it through," Zethis said, his voice tight with anticipation. The image that appeared on the screen was unlike anything he had expected. A human male looked back at them, his dark hair streaked with grey, his brown eyes warm and welcoming. He wore simple but well-made clothing, and his face carried the weathered look of someone who had spent years under an alien sun. "Welcome to Zerion Prime," the human said with a smile. "I am David Chen, administrator of New Terra Colony. We detected your ship as you approached our system. It's been a long time since we've had visitors from the stars." Zethis found himself speechless. A living human, speaking calmly from a world that should have been a graveyard. Dr. Nixara leaned forward, her tentacles trembling with excitement. "I am Commander Zethis of the Catharian Collective," he finally managed. "We came here to study the remains of your colony. We believed it had failed decades ago." David laughed, a sound that seemed to fill the bridge with unexpected warmth. "Failed, I suppose. From the outside it might have looked that way. We did stop transmitting to Earth about 150 years ago. But we're very much alive and thriving. Would you like to visit our world? We'd be honored to host representatives of the Catharian Collective." Dr. Nixara whispered to her commander, "This changes everything we know about human colonial survival." "Rates, how is this possible?" Zethis was wondering the same thing. Every study, every report, every piece of data they had suggested that isolated human colonies could not survive. Without constant support from their homeworld, Earth had stopped, sending supply ships to Zarian Prime after 50 years, assuming the colony had died out like so many others. "We would be honored to visit," Zethis replied. "But I must ask, how many of your people are there?" "About 80,000 now," David said with obvious pride. "We've grown quite a bit since the early days. My great-grandmother was one of the original colonists. She used to tell stories about those first difficult years. 80,000. Zethis felt his crystalline structure vibrate with amazement. The original colony ship had carried only 5,000 people. This meant the humans had not only survived, but had grown their population by 16 times over 2 centuries. "There's someone you should meet," David continued. "Alina Vasquez is our head historian. She knows more about our early days than anyone. She'd be fascinated to speak with alien researchers who study colonial development." As the Starweaver moved into orbit around Zarian Prime, Zethis stared down at the lights scattered across the planet's surface. Each light represented human families, human dreams, human lives that had somehow found a way to flourish on a world that should have killed them. "Prepare a diplomatic landing party," he ordered his crew. "We are about to witness something unprecedented in colonial history." But as the ship descended toward the planet's surface, Zethis had no idea that what they were about to discover would challenge everything the galaxy thought it knew about human nature, human survival, and the terrifying lengths to which humans would go to protect their own. The landing shuttle touched down on a paved platform at the edge of New Terra Colony. As the doors opened, Zethis and his team were greeted by clean air that smelled of growing plants and distant rain. The sky above was a deep blue, crossed by white clouds that cast moving shadows across the landscape. David Chen waited for them with 2 other humans. One was a woman with silver hair and kind eyes, wearing clothes that looked both practical and elegant. The other was an elderly man leaning on a walking stick carved from local wood. "Welcome to Zarian Prime," David said, extending his hand in the human greeting gesture. "This is Alina Vasquez, our head historian, and Thomas Wright, one of our senior engineers. Tom's been here for 60 years. Zethis carefully shook hands with each human, amazed by their warmth and genuine friendliness. Most species were nervous or defensive when meeting Catharians for the first time. These humans seemed genuinely delighted to have visitors. "I must admit," Zethis said, "we are amazed to find you here. All our records indicated that this colony had failed." Alina smiled. "We've heard that before. About 40 years ago, a survey ship from the Terran Federation found us. They were just as surprised as you are. Apparently, Earth wrote us off as dead after we stopped sending transmissions." "Why did you stop?" Dr. Nixara asked, her tentacles curling with curiosity. Thomas Wright chuckled, because we realized we didn't need them anymore. We had become something new, something that could stand on its own. We were no longer just humans trying to survive on an alien world. We had become Zerians. As they walked through the colony, Zethus saw signs of a thriving civilization everywhere. Children played in gardens between well-built houses. Adults worked in fields that stretched to the horizon. Solar collectors gleamed on rooftops, and wind generators turned slowly on distant hills. How did you survive those first years? Dr. Nixara asked. Our studies show that colonies this size typically fail within the first decade. Elena's expression grew serious. We almost did fail. The first 10 years were terrible. We lost nearly half our population to disease, accidents, and the harsh environment. But we learned something important during those dark times. What was that? Zethus asked. We learned that humans don't just survive, Thomas said. We adapt, we change. We become whatever we need to become to protect our families and our future. They stopped at a monument in the colony's center. It was a simple stone pillar covered with names, thousands of them, carved into the surface with obvious care. These are the people who died in our first 50 years, Alina explained. Each name represents someone who gave their life so the rest of us could live. They died building our water systems, testing our food crops, defending us from the planet's dangers. Zethus read some of the names. Under each one were simple words. Died testing new medicine. Lost in storm while bringing food. Gave life to save trapped miners. They were heroes, Dr. Nixara said softly. They were human, Alina replied. When everything seems hopeless, when death is all around you, humans don't give up. We roll up our sleeves and get to work. We take care of each other. We find a way. As the sun set over New Terra Colony, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Zethus began to understand that they had not just discovered a surviving human colony. They had found something much more significant, proof that humans possessed something that even the most advanced alien civilizations struggled to understand. Tomorrow, David said, we'll show you how we built all this. You'll see our factories, our farms, our research centers. You'll meet the people who turned a hostile world into a home. But as Zethus looked out over the thriving colony, he sensed that there was more to this story than simple survival. There was something in the humans' eyes, something in the way they spoke about their past, that suggested their success had come at a cost that other species might find difficult to understand. The real discoveries, he realized, were yet to come. The revelation the next morning brought crisp air and the sound of activity throughout New Terra Colony. Commander Zethus and Dr. Nixara were awakened by the gentle hum of machinery and the distant voices of humans beginning their daily work. David Chen met them at their quarters with fresh local food and warm drinks made from plants that grew nowhere else in the galaxy. I hope you slept well, David said, his smile as warm as the previous day. Today, we want to show you something special, something that will help you understand how we really survived here. They were joined by a new human, a man in his 50s, with calloused hands and bright, intelligent eyes. His clothes were stained with oil and metal dust, and he carried himself with the confident air of someone who could build anything with his own hands. This is Marcus Torres, David explained. He's our chief engineer and inventor. If you want to understand how we survived, Marcus is the person to talk to. Marcus shook hands with both aliens, his grip firm but careful. Welcome to our world. I understand you're interested in colonial survival techniques. Well, you've come to the right place. They walked through the colony toward a large building that hummed with energy. As they approached, Zethus could see that it was some kind of manufacturing facility, but it looked unlike any factory he had ever seen. The walls were made from local stone and metal, and the design seemed to blend perfectly with the natural landscape. This is where we make everything we need, Marcus explained as they entered. Tools, electronics, vehicles, medical equipment, everything you see was built right here on Zerion Prime. Dr. Nixera's tentacles twitched with amazement. As she looked around, the facility was full of machines that looked both primitive and advanced at the same time. Humans worked alongside robots that appeared to be built from salvaged parts, creating complex devices with remarkable precision. "How is this possible?" she asked. "Our records show that your original colony ship carried only basic industrial equipment. This level of manufacturing should be impossible without constant supply shipments from Earth." Marcus grinned. "That's where you're wrong. When you're about to die, you learn to make the impossible possible. Let me show you something." He led them to a display case filled with electronic components. But as Zethus looked closer, he realized these weren't standard human electronics. They were made from materials he didn't recognize, assembled in ways that seemed to defy conventional engineering principles. "These are made from local minerals and biological materials," Marcus explained. "When our original equipment started failing, we had two choices: die or figure out how to make new equipment from what we had. We chose to live." He picked up a small device that looked like a communication unit. "This is made from crystallized tree sap, processed sand, and metal we extracted from local rocks. It works better than the original Earth-made equipment." Dr. Nixera examined the device with her instruments. "This is incredible. The molecular structure is completely unique. How did you develop this technology?" "Trial and error," Marcus said. "Simply, mostly error at first. A lot of people died testing new materials and techniques, but each failure taught us something new." They moved deeper into the facility, where Zethus saw humans working with materials that seemed to shimmer with their own inner light. The workers moved with careful precision, their faces showing the intense concentration of people who knew that mistakes could be fatal. "What are they making?" Zethus asked. "Medical equipment," Marcus replied. "We've developed treatments for diseases that don't exist anywhere else in the galaxy. Our doctors can perform surgeries that would be impossible with standard equipment." A new voice joined the conversation. "That's because we've had to become more than human." They turned to see a woman in a white lab coat approaching them. She was tall and lean, with prematurely grey hair and eyes that seemed to hold depths of knowledge that made Zethus uncomfortable. "This is Dr. Sarah Kim," David said. "She's our head medical researcher and geneticist." Dr. Kim shook hands with the aliens, her grip precise and clinical. "I've been studying human adaptation for the past 30 years. What we've accomplished here goes beyond simple survival. We've essentially guided our own evolution." "What do you mean?" Dr. Nixera asked, her voice tight with scientific curiosity. "Come with me," Dr. Kim said, leading them to her laboratory. "Let me show you what humans become when they have no choice but to adapt or die." The laboratory was filled with equipment that looked far more advanced than anything Zethus had expected to find on a colonial world. Screens showed complex genetic sequences, and machines hummed with the quiet efficiency of cutting-edge technology. "This is the heart of our survival," Dr. Kim explained. When the first colonists started dying from local diseases and environmental hazards, we realized that we couldn't just treat the symptoms. We had to change ourselves. She pulled up a holographic display showing 2 human genetic sequences side by side. This is a genetic map of an original Earth human, and this is a modern Xerian. Can you see the differences? Zethis studied the display, his crystalline features shifting color with amazement. The 2 sequences were clearly from the same species, but the differences were remarkable. The Xerian genetic code showed modifications that seemed to enhance immune response, environmental adaptation, and physical resilience. You changed your own genetics, Dr. Nixara whispered. We had to, Dr. Kim replied. The planet was killing us. The local bacteria, the radiation from the twin suns, the chemical composition of the soil and water. Normal humans couldn't survive here for more than a few years, so we made ourselves into something that could. They were interrupted by the arrival of another human, this one very old but still moving with surprising strength. He leaned heavily on a walking stick, but his eyes were bright and alert. This is Old Pete, David said, with obvious respect. He's one of the last survivors from the original colony ship. He's seen everything we've been through. Old Pete studied the aliens with eyes that held memories of unimaginable hardship. You want to know how we survived? I'll tell you. We survived because we learned to do things that would horrify most civilized species. Zethis felt a chill run through his crystalline structure. What do you mean? Old Pete was quiet for a long moment, his weathered hands gripping his walking stick. The second winter, we lost our last connection to Earth. No more supply ships, no more messages, no more help. We were alone on a world that wanted to kill. Us food was running out. People were dying every day. The leaders called a meeting to decide what to do. He paused, his eyes distant with memory. Some people wanted to give up. They said we should send out a distress signal and wait for rescue. Others wanted to ration what we had and hope for the best. But there was a third group. They said we needed to do whatever it took to survive. Whatever it took. What did they decide? Dr. Nixara asked, though something in her voice suggested she wasn't sure she wanted to know. They decided to survive, Old Pete said simply. They created what we call the Xerian Protocol. It's a set of principles that guide everything we do. The first principle is simple. The survival of the colony comes before everything else. The second principle is that any action that serves the colony's survival is justified. The third principle is that we never give up, no matter what the cost. Zethis felt his chest cavity resonate with unease. What kind of actions? Old Pete looked directly at him. In the third winter, we ran out of protein. People were starving. The hunting parties couldn't find enough game to feed everyone. So we made a decision that saved the colony but cost us our innocence. The old man's words hung in the air like a physical weight. Zethis realized that he was about to learn something about human nature that most aliens never discovered. We implemented survival rationing, Old Pete continued. The sick, the elderly, the injured who couldn't contribute to the colony's survival received smaller portions. Some of them died, but their sacrifice meant that the healthy, productive members of the colony could survive to build a future. Dr. Nixara's tentacles curled with distress. You let people die. We chose who lived and who died, Old Pete said bluntly. It was the hardest decision any of us ever made, but it worked. The colony survived. Marcus stepped forward. That's not the whole story. Yes, we made hard choices, but we also made sure that no one died in vain. Every person who didn't survive contributed to our knowledge. Every failure taught us something new. Every loss made us stronger. Dr. Kim nodded. The genetic modifications we've made to ourselves came from studying. The people who died, we learned what killed them, and we changed ourselves so it wouldn't kill us again. But there's more, old Pete said. The protocol doesn't just apply to survival. It applies to everything. When we discovered that the local predators were killing our livestock, we didn't just defend ourselves, we hunted them to extinction. When we found that certain plants were poisonous, we didn't just avoid them, we destroyed every one we could find. He looked directly at Seth. We learned that in survival, there's no such thing as mercy. There's no such thing as half measures. You either do everything necessary to survive, or you die. We chose to live. The tour continued, but now Zethis saw everything with new eyes. The thriving colony wasn't just a testament to human ingenuity and determination. It was evidence of what humans could become when they abandoned the moral limitations that kept other species from achieving such success. At the original colony ship crash site, old Pete showed them the memorial that marked where 2,000 people had died in the first year. These people died so we could learn, he said. Their deaths taught us about the climate, the local dangers, the resources we could use. We built our entire civilization on their sacrifice. As the day ended and the aliens prepared to return to their ship, David Chen gathered the human leaders for a final meeting. You've seen our world, he said. You've learned our history. Now you understand why we stopped transmitting to Earth. Why? Zethis asked. Because we knew that if they understood what we had become, they would either try to stop us or try to use us. We had become something that most civilized species would fear. We had become humans who were willing to do anything to survive. Dr. Kim stepped forward. We've shared our story with you because we respect the Catherian collective. You're explorers and scientists, not conquerors. But we need you to understand something important. What's that? Dr. Nixera asked. We're not just a successful human colony, Alina Vasquez said. We're proof of what humans can become when they're pushed to their limits. We're what happens when survival becomes more important than morality. We're what your species would call a terrifying legacy. As the Star Weaver lifted off from Zerion Prime, Zethis stared down at the lights of New Terra Colony. He now understood that they had not just discovered a surviving human settlement. They had found evidence of a species that could transform itself into something beyond the understanding of most galactic civilizations. The humans of Zerion Prime had survived by embracing principles that most species would find abhorrent. They had thrived by making choices that would haunt the dreams of more civilized beings. They had built a paradise by walking through hell, and emerging transformed. Commander, Dr. Nixera said quietly, what do we report to the collective? Zethis was quiet for a long moment. We report that we found a successful human colony, but we also report that we now understand why the galaxy should both respect and fear the human species. They possess something that we lack, the ability to become whatever they need to become to survive. As the ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving Zerion Prime behind, Zethis knew that their discovery would change how the galaxy viewed humanity. The humans were not just another young species struggling to find their place among the stars. They were something far more dangerous and far more valuable. Survivors who would do anything to protect their own. The terrifying legacy of Zerion Prime was not just that humans could survive impossible odds. It was that they could transform themselves into something that made survival possible, regardless of the cost to their souls.